So we are talking at the moment about the essentials or essential conditions for the validity of a promissory note. We said that it must be in writing. A verbal promise can never be termed as a promissory note. It may be a valid promise, an enforceable promise. So again, I'll quote the case of Badam Gul and Kala Khan. If Kala Khan, when he sold his his laptop to Badam Gul, and Badam Gul verbally promised that he will pay for 50,000 rupees after 4 months. Now this is a valid contract, and this is a valid as well as enforceable promise. Okay, and how it would be proved by Khala Khan, this is his headache, not ours. But let me tell you that if he is able to prove this promise, only then he would be able to take the matter to a court of law in case where Badam Gul refuses. He says, I have never bought your, just suppose Badam Gul says, oh, are you mad? I have never bought your laptop. I never, owe you 50,000 rupees. So Kala Khan would naturally be taking the matter to a court of law, and there the court of law will ask him to prove. Why? Because if you recall, in the beginning of the semester, I told you that there is a globally recognized and accepted principle of law of evidence that the burden of proof or the onus of proof, ONUS, which means burden, onus of proof is upon the one who claims. So if Kala Khan claims that he has sold his laptop to Badam Gul, and Badam Gul has made a promise to pay this the price of the laptop, for 50,000 rupees after 4 months. Now he's refusing, so he will be proving it. So he can prove it by way of witnesses if he can arrange, or if this promise was made by Badam Gul in the presence of two witnesses at least would be needed to prove it. That's why I'm saying that this is his headache. It would be a promise, but it can't be technically and legally termed as a promissory note. Why not? Because it is not in writing. So the very first condition or very first essential for the validity of a promissory note is that it must be in writing and it must contain a promise. And I told you that, the one who is making a promissory note must use a word which gives the meaning of promise. So you can say, Badam Gul can say, I hereby promise. Okay, I hereby promise. In the same way, he can use any other word which conveys the meaning of promise. Like if you look into the definition, you will come to know, I'm sorry. If you look to the definition, the very definition has used a word, undertaking. So if Badam Gul writes while making a promissory note which he intends to give to Kala Khan, if he says, I hereby undertake, so that would be enough to make this promissory note as a valid and enforceable promissory note. But how about the case in which he says, he admits, he acknowledges, or he gives a receipt where he says, I hereby acknowledge that I have bought a laptop. Just listen to me. In the promissory note, Badam Gul is saying that I hereby acknowledge to receive the delivery of the laptop which I have bought from Kala Khan. And instead of saying I hereby promise to pay him, he says, I am planning to pay rupees 50,000 to to Kala Khan. Badam Gul says, I am planning. So this word planning never shows a promise. It never shows a promise. It shows only his intention. And you see, this instrument would not be a promissory note, although it can be a valid piece of evidence, although it would be enough if he acknowledges in writing, you see, that he has received, you see, the laptop which Kalahan has delivered to him under the contract of sale, and he intends to pay, or he is planning to pay 50,000 rupees, the price of the laptop, to Kalahan. It would be a very valid and effective piece of evidence which Kalahan can present to the court of law while suing Badangul. But it cannot not be a promissory note. It is not a promissory note at all. Why? Because the word which has been used by Badam Gul, you see, they never convey the meaning of a promise. That's why. The second example is that where he says, where he says that he admits, I hereby acknowledge to receive the laptop which I have bought from Kala Khan. I hereby acknowledge the receipt of the laptop, and no, he says, and I will pay him 50,000 rupees after 4 months. Okay, are you understanding? Let me repeat it again. In the language of the promissory, in the language of the so-called promissory note, he says that I acknowledge to receive the delivery of the laptop which I have bought from Kalahan, and I will pay him. Even if he says I shall pay him, it is not going to be a promise. I will pay him again. You see, uh, gives the sense of an intention, and never used in the English language for a promise. So that's why, again, in this second case where he says, I will pay rupees 50,000 to Kalahan, the price of, after 4 months, the price of his laptop. Okay, so this is not a promissory note, although again, let me tell you, it is a very valid and relevant piece of evidence which Kala Khan can present to a court of law, and on the basis of which Kala Khan can win the case against Badam Gul. But it is not a promissory note. Why not? Because the word promise is not uh, being used in it. Okay, so this is condition number 3. The next condition, condition number 4, is that it shall contain, the promissory note shall contain a promise. You see, it must be in writing, it must contain a promise, and this promise shall be for the payment of money only. What does it mean? And you might have noted that I'm not saying he must or it must. I'm saying it shall contain, he shall. Um, I have explained to you, I remember that in the language of law, two words are very important to understand: may and shall. Where in a legislation, the term may has been used, it means that it shows discretion. He may means he may or may not. He is at liberty, he is at discretion, either to do or not to do. But where the law, or where the contract uses the term shall, it means it is mandatory. He shall means he must. Okay? So a promissory note shall contain a promise to pay money only. I mean, a promissory note, a bill of exchange, a check must be only and only for money. What is money? Money is rupees, reals, pounds, dollars, this, that. This is what is called money. Okay. So if in a promissory note, just suppose, just let me give you an example of a promissory note which Badam Gul says that, look, Badam Gul asks him that, look, I don't have money. I'll pay you uh, out of 50,000, I'll pay you 25,000 in cash, and I have rice. You see, I have rice. I deliver you 500 kilogram of rice, which is equivalent to 25,000 rupees, and Kala Khan agrees. Kala Khan agrees to this arrangement. So he writes in promissory note, Badam Gul writes in promissory note that I promise to pay rupees 25,000 rupees and to deliver 500 kg of rice to Kala Khan. So what's your opinion? Can it be a promissory note? No, not at all. It can't be a promissory note. It is a promise. Again, it is a promise, and it is an enforceable promise. And this document can be taken as an evidence against him, but in no case it can be a promissory note. Why? Because the requirement of Section 4, the requirement of definition of promissory note in Section 4 of Negotiable Instrument Act of 1887, 1881, is that it must be for, this promise must be for money and money only. While here he is making the promise for money as well as rice. Therefore, this is not a promissory note. In the same way, where he agrees Kala Khan with Kala Khan. You see that, look, Kala Khan, I don't have money, but it's the time of harvest. I have a lot of rice at home. So why don't you take rice instead of cash? And he writes in the promissory note that I hereby make a promise that after 4 months I will deliver to him 1,000 kilograms of I have bought. He acknowledges in the promissory note. He says that I hereby acknowledge that I have received the laptop which I have bought from Kala Khan for 50,000 rupees, and I hereby promise to deliver to him at the time of harvest at after 4 months 1,000 kilogram of rice, kernel banaspati rice. Okay, banaspati or vanaspati, what is it? I'm not sure about that. Anyways, you see, his this promise is a promise, and it is a valid promise, enforceable promise. It is in writing, and you see, it can be made an evidence to prove this contract of sale of laptop against Badam would, but it cannot be a promissory note. In that case, if you wanted to transfer it to someone else, then assignment. It would not be negotiable. Why? Because it is not a promissory note. So the fourth condition is that this promise, it must contain a promise, and the promise must be for payment of money and money only. The next condition number 5, is that this promissory note must be signed by the maker. What does it mean? I mean, without signature, a promissory note would not be a promissory note unless it is signed. Okay, but if Badam Gul is an illiterate person and he cannot sign his name, then his thumb impression would be enough. Okay, and a promise, whether it is a promissory note or it's a bill of exchange or a check, you see, whatever it is, particularly a bill of exchange and you see, a promissory note, they have to be signed by the maker. And what does it mean? They have to be executed. They have to be executed. What does execution mean? Meaning that the maker of a promissory note must have signed it, and not only simply signed it, but he must have signed it in the presence of two witnesses, and those two witnesses must have put their signatures, you see, after the signature of the maker. Okay, this is what is called execution. So an instrument is executed. Executed means signed in the presence of two witnesses, and those witnesses, in the language of the law of evidence, are called attesting witnesses. They attest. You might have seen in so many instruments. I'm not talking about negotiable instrument. In so many instruments like sale deed, like a deed of, you see, something else. You see, that is attested by two witnesses. So should be the procedure for making a promissory note, a valid promissory note. It must be signed, not only signed, but the sign must have been attested by two witnesses, and there are two, the witnesses, their signature must be there at the bottom of the promissory note. Uh, the maker shall be a certain person. I mean, is there any need to say this? He must be a certain person. Okay. I mean, must have existence, must be known. While he is required to sign his name, it means that he is a certain person. But question here arises that is it essential that he must be a natural person? No, it's not essential. He must be a person, whether natural or juristic. A company, a juristic personality, that is to say, a company can also can be a maker of a promissory note. A company may make a promissory note, but question again will arise here that who will sign it? Because the company has got no existence. It is an imaginary personality created by operation of law. Company has got no hands to hold a pen and sign. So there are directors who are agents of the company, and they will sign it on behalf of the company. I mean to say that whether it's a natural person or it's a juristic person, in both the cases, he must be certain, he must have existence. Okay, and it must be proved. How it is proved that, but there is a person called Badamgul. He must sign his name. He must sign it in the presence of two witnesses. Not only this, but he must mention, you see, this is a legal requirement. He must mention the number of his national identity card. Okay. In the same way, the payee shall be certain person. The payee shall be a certain person. If you remember, just I told you that it can be a promissory note, can be a bearer promissory note. Okay, Jab, when you see Kala, when Badam Gul made this promissory note, he promised that he would pay rupees 50,000 to Kala Khan. So Kala Khan's name was there. Kala Khan, you see, handed it over to Allah Dita. So Allah Dita is a transferee. I mean, you see, he is not certain. He is not known at the time of making of that promissory note, but you see, he is a certain person. If it has been transferred, it can be made, you see, payable to a bearer, the one who is in possession of this promissory note. And as I told you that till the time of maturity of this promissory note, it can change 1,000 hands. So the last person who holds it and who is a holder in due course. What is holder in due course? Wait for the next uh, week to tell you. So he would be able to get money from Kala Khan, from Badam Gul on the basis of this. So payee must be a person, must, I mean, there must be a payee, whether he's a bearer or he is, you see, Kala Khan. Uh, the next requirement for the validity of a promissory note is that amount of money payable shall be certain. The amount of money must be certain. Where Badam will, you see, acknowledges to receive the laptop, and where he, you see, promises in the very express and clear term that he will pay the price, but he hasn't mentioned the amount of money which he is promising to pay as price of the laptop, then this is not a promissory note. Okay, where he says that I hereby acknowledge to receive the laptop which Kala Khan has sold to me, which I have bought from Kala Khan, and I hereby make promise that I'll pay him the price. It's not clear how much, What's the price? It must be clear. So again, it can be, it is a promise and valid promise, but it is not a valid promissory note. I have mentioned two examples, two illustrations. If you look into the presentation, I don't see the number of the slide, but the left number of paragraph is 1.4.7, which talks about the requirement that the amount of money shall be certain. There, I have given you two at the bottom of the slide. You will find two illustration. In one illustration, I'm saying that if the language of the promissory note says that I promise to pay Kala Khan rupees 50,000 and all other amounts which shall be due from me to him during the year 2020. So what do you say? Is the amount certain? It is clear how much amount he is promising to pay. No, it's not clear. That's why this promissory note is not a valid promissory note. Okay, why? Because God knows how much he would owe him in the year 2020. Second example, the maker says that I promise to pay Chinar Gul rupees 50,000 first, deducting from it any amount which he may owe me. So God knows how much he owes him. In both the cases, the amount of money payable is not certain. That's why it is not a valid promissory note. Okay. So this was about the promissory note. I mean the negotiable instrument number one, with which our course deals, with which the act deals. Number two is bill of exchange. Okay, what is bill of exchange? Section 5 of the Negotiable Instrument Act 1881 defines promissory note. And again, I'll urge you to look into the definition, you see, with full attention, and try to understand it well. Why? Because this is the litmus and this is the standard which will tell you whether certain instrument is a bill of exchange or not, because all the requirements are mentioned in all the essential requirements for the validity of a bill of exchange are mentioned in the definition of section 5. So let us look into the definition. The definition says that bill of exchange is an instrument in writing containing an unconditional order signed by the maker, directing a certain person to pay a certain sum of money only to or to the order of a certain person or to the bearer of the instrument. Very easy to understand. Don't get embarrassed. And I'm time and again telling you that these acts, these legislations, you see, they have not been drafted to be taught as a textbook in a class. That's why they have been drafted with the viewpoint of a lawmaker or law drafter. So it says that it must be an instrument. First of all, it must be an instrument, or this instrument shall be in writing. A bill of exchange is an instrument in writing containing an unconditional order signed by the maker directing a certain person to pay a certain sum of money only to or to the order of a certain person or to the bearer of the instrument. Okay, we will discuss the essential requirements of a bill of exchange uh, with detail. We'll talk about every single requirement of essential requirement for the validity of a bill of exchange. But first of all, talk about the parties. In a promissory note, there are two parties, the maker and the payee. But here, in the case of bill of exchange, there are three parties. Three parties. And as you have seen in the in the definition of bill of exchange in section 5 of the Negotiable Instrument Act of 1881, that you see one orders, unconditionally orders a person to pay a third person an amount of money. So means three parties. So the one who orders, okay, the one who unconditionally orders another, he is called drawer. Drawer. So the drawer of a bill of exchange is the person who makes the order addressed to another who is called drawee. Okay, the drawee is the one who is ordered by the maker. I'm intentionally saying maker, the one who makes, but he's not called maker. He's called drawer because he draws this order. So he is the drawee who is ordered by the drawer to pay the payee a certain amount of money. So the one who is the beneficiary of this bill of exchange, he is known as payee. So there are three parties: drawer, drawee, and payee. All right, is that clear? How there are three parties and why this order is drawn or made by the drawer to the drawee. Again, I'll take you back to the case of Kalahan and Badam. Just suppose, just suppose that Kalahan, uh, you see, Badam Gul has no money at him. They are in Islamabad. When this laptop was sold to Badam Gul by Kalahan, both of them, they are in Islamabad. Both of them might be students of uh, LLB, the students of BBA term 6. Badam Gul says, look, Kalahan, I'm interested in buying and I can pay you 50,000 rupees. But unfortunately, I don't have money here. Okay. Yes, I have my elder brother. He can pay you if you go to Peshawar. So Kalakan may agree. Kalakan may agree if he is interested in getting rid of his his laptop. He can say, "All right, I'll travel to Peshawar and get this money from there." So in that case, Badam Gul writes on a paper, on a stamp paper, addressing his brother to pay Badam Gul, to pay Kala Khan an amount of 50,000 rupees without saying anything about the laptop which he has sold. He may simply say that pay Badam Gul, pay Kala Khan 50,000 rupees. He can be his brother. He can be his uh, you see, his agent, and he can be a bank as well. If you look at the picture of a check, it starts with pay, and there is an empty column. Pay Mr. So and so or bearer. So this is an order, you see, which is drawn, or the order is given by the drawer to the drawee, you see, directing him, ordering him that he shall pay the payee an amount of money. So what happens? That Kalafan says, all right, if you don't have money, Peshawar is not very far. It's just 2 hours journey. I'll go and I'll get money from there, from your brother. And if it is mentioned, I mean, the address, naturally it must be mentioned. So Bada Karahan in that case will go to Badam's Gul brother and he will present the bill to him and will show him that, look, your brother has sent me. This is called promissory note, and these are the three parties: drawer, drawee, and payee. There is another, you see, there are other transactions which resemble uh, this bill of exchange, but they are not bills of exchange. Like, you see, if you are in the way and you wanted to send your money to your family, you should, as a loyal Pakistani, you should go to a bank and you should transfer, you see, through a bank to your family. but you see the transfer fees is too much, and comparatively there are people, you will go to them, you'll give them, just suppose, 100,000 rupees, you'll give them the address of your family, their telephone number, etc., etc. They will get the money. They will never send it to Pakistan. They will phone their agent in Pakistan that, look, go and pay 1,000 rupees. So since this the fee of the money changes, they call it money changer or something like that. You see, is many times lesser than the bank transfer. That's why people, but money never comes to Pakistan. Foreign exchange never comes to Pakistan. It remains outside. Okay, so that's not loyalty with you for few rupees. This is not a loyalty of Pakistanis. This is called hundi. Hundi. It resembles. Why? Because the money changer orders his agent. You see, money changer, he resembles a drawer in this transaction. And the one to whom he's ordered, his agent in Pakistan, he is drawee, and the family is the payee. But this is not, it can't be called, it can't be called, you see, a bill of exchange. Why not? Because so many essential conditions are not fulfilled by this transaction. At the top is that it is not in writing, and remaining in next section, next session.